Hello, and welcome to Startups in Real Life. We're in week 7 of a 10-week, 2 times a week discussion with Rae Hames, talking all things startup. If you have any insight, support, advice, we would love to hear it. Drop us a message and we will connect. So let's get to it. Hello, Rae. It has been a
Hi.
hopping week.
Yeah, it has.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. It's always the same thing. I can't believe it's already Thursday.
I know. So I know you've been working on trying to make sure that we truly understand our customers' needs, and we had a nice discussion about that earlier in the week. For one key customer, you've been creating a tool to help that make decisions on when to bring or to consider hiring freelance talent versus working with external teams. And I would love it if you would just share kind of the journey that you had to get to creating this tool and just any of the process around that.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm excited we can also give everybody a sneak peek with the calculator that's now live on our site. So to answer your first question, like really this is a tool that is meant for folks within in-house teams that are looking to augment their talent workforce. Usually they'd go to an agency, right? Like I think that is kind of the historical model of saying, hey, we need more hands on deck. We don't want to hire internally. We need specific skill sets. We need fractional support. And so hiring an agency makes sense. Over the past, 5 years, certainly it's been accelerated by the pandemic. The agency model is no longer working for a lot of brand side users for a lot of reasons. Like the biggest of which is that most of the best talent is now working freelance and they've left the agency space. So the skill sets and the talent that you're going to get within the agency ecosystem is just, it's going to be harder to find great talent than it used to be, because that used to be like the talent hotspot back when I was on agency side. And the other factor is sheer transparency around pricing and around who's actually doing the work. Because in ye olden days, you'd hire an agency for an incredible creative director or an incredible media director, an amazing strategist. But the people doing the work beneath those people, you have no control over who's actually doing the research, building creative, and there's a lot of time waste in that ecosystem. And there's, again, just so much transparency about the way that teams work now and the way that those roles are built out, that brands are more and more, they're looking at agencies with a sharper pencil than they used to. Mm-hmm. And so we've built this calculator to help brands understand, does it make more sense to invest time and resources in building a flexible framework of freelance teams to support their needs within their in-house groups, as opposed to using an agency partner? A healthy agency is running like a 3x markup on most rates. I don't know any agency that's totally getting away with that these days, but any agency that's in business has to be running a 25 to 50% markup just to stay in business because of the overhead costs of running that type of business. And so if you look at your cost savings over the course of a month, a year, 3 years, however long you may be looking at engaging an agency, especially with a retainer relationship, it becomes more and more compelling to build your own team. And of course, like the reasons why brands work with agencies outside of kind of the cost model, but like the flexibility, being able to tap into specific skill sets, being able to dial up and down teams, that can all be very simply achieved if you've got the right freelance infrastructure in place to support your full-time team. So, that's the genesis of how we got to a conversation about deciding, does it make sense? Of course, there's work in hiring freelance teams. Of course, there's work in managing freelancers. But when you start to look at the bottom line of how much you stand to save, could that savings go towards a dedicated project manager? Could that savings go towards paying your team and paying your freelancers above market rate so that they're really loyal to you and they want to come to you for project work over and over again? Could that go towards just hard media costs to make your results, go further and faster? It becomes really compelling, like I said, when you look at the numbers. And so knowing what we know, again, deep background in the agency space, tons of statistics around agency markups and average roll rates, we're able to build a calculator that can tell brand side users, again, how much they stand to gain by building a freelance team to support their own needs. So that's how we got to this tool. And I'm hopeful that it's a useful kind of interactive element for folks who are considering making this move. And that as they see by the numbers, like, does this make sense for me or does it not, that they'll consider using Teamera's tools to manage their freelance teams.
Okay, got it. Do you want to quickly walk through it and then we can
Yeah, I'd
share
love
some of the
to.
results?
Yeah, it's exciting. And
All
I
right.
really hope that for anybody watching this, that they'll go play around with it. We would love feedback. This is kind of Gen 1.
Yeah.
And so any comments, questions, thoughts around it, I'd love to hear it, because we want to make this a sophisticated tool that can really be used as a decision maker over time. So let's jump into it. And then we'll also talk about what people get after they use it, because I think that there's some other intel on the back end that can help them understand how to use and how to set up elastic teams.
Great. So do you want to explain it?
Sure. So this is the basic input form. When I've talked about elastic teams a lot. This is a kind of a catch-all term for a team that is a combination of full-time and freelance talent that is on deck and ready to support your brand. Teamera has built tools to help you manage elastic teams better. And so when we say elastic teams, that's what we mean. So getting into the simple input form that we're looking for here, brand side leaders can take a look and say, okay, how many people are on my team that I'm considering, right? If I have an agency team right now, how many folks are on that team? And do I know what percentage of them are actually working freelance? Because agencies hire freelance talent all the time to support project needs, but they're getting billed out at full-time rates. Like, they have a rate card, they're billed on their seniority, and that's how pricing works. It keeps it simple for the agency. Ultimately, it keeps it simple for the brand, but at a cost, to the retainer or project scope bottom line. So you plug in your headcount, you plug in your percentage of that team who is freelance. You look at the average hours that are being worked per role. Like I said, a lot of the reasons why brands work with agencies is because they offer fractional support. So, in this example, we have everybody working 40 hours a week. But if you look across those 5 people, that average might actually be 30. It might actually be 25. It just depends on the scope of your team. Their average hourly rate, you look at your rate card and say, what am I being charged for these roles? And what is the average agency markup? Sometimes brands won't know this. Sometimes it's smoke and mirrors. Like I said, a real healthy agency back in the day was running a 3x markup. And that was to pay for brick and mortar. That was certainly for the holding companies, there's a profit margin built in for those global holding companies that they need to see from their partners. But any agency that's going to stay in business these days is probably running around a 50% markup.
And, going back to an earlier conversation we had, just knowing when it's right to do so, because those agencies have incredible value. There's no doubt in that. It's about weighing when to consider bringing it in-house, or at least bringing a percentage of it if it's something that you're just intimately involved with and that you have the time as a leader to really engage more, instead of just handing it over to other experts.
And that's a big it's a big caveat that you bring up, because certainly you stand to save more. The bigger your team, the more you stand to save as you bring those folks in. But of course, there's workload in managing those people. And there's probably layers to your agency team if you have 10 or 15 or 30 people assigned to your business. And so certainly the decision it's not as quick as saying, oh, well, am I going to save money? Sure, I should do this. It's of course, it's a more considered decision, but the underlying point is, can that cost savings afford you, like I said, a project manager, an operational manager, the internal support that companies need to facilitate this transition and support this flexible workforce long term? The major benefits outside of just the costs of bringing these folks closer to the fold is everybody has a closer relationship with your brand and has a closer relationship with the work that they're producing. And so, even if you're bringing them in on a part-time basis a couple times a year for campaign work, having the right people close to your company and close to your, your leadership team or your strategy team is going to make it easier to get them up to speed. It's going to be easier to get projects moving from day one. And the work's going to be better because because of that, talent perspective being so close to the company as opposed to being at arm's distance with a more traditional agency relationship.
Right. So, yeah, fill this out. And then once you kind of say calculate savings, we give you a report that looks very much like this. And Rae, do you want to kind of walk through the details of this?
Yeah, and this is a lot of nitty gritty. I think that we have a simple view and we have a more detailed view. This is the detailed view so that folks can see really where we're doing the math. I don't want this to be the point of what we're trying to create is transparency. So here we go. You look at talent base rates. This is how many hours versus what the hourly rate is. As I said, on the agency side, most folks are getting billed out as full-time team members with the same kind of benefits and overhead, even if they're freelance, because it's easy and straightforward to just bill on a rate card based on seniority. So you can assume that, again, going off the base rates, what do talent benefits cost? We know, like we've been in AOR, EOR before. This is roughly 25% of talent base rates, looking at what is the cost to administer healthcare, what's the cost to offer perks, what's the cost to have a 401k match, and what are employer taxes for W-2s. So that's another piece that gets rolled into the agency base cost, the hard cost, before adding agency fees, right? Like, of course, as a business, and this makes sense, this is no fault to an agency, this is how businesses operate, is you look at your total hard costs, and then you add a margin for how much you need to be making on top of that to, for all of the rest of the business operating costs, right? Like people aren't the only costs that go into running a business. So on the agency side, you go down that line and you can see where those all shake out based on the inputs that the user put in the first screen. And then we also know that they put in it, so their agency is running at a 50% markup. So those agency fees, month over month are $27,000. And again, this is not a bad thing. This is how agencies have to operate. As a business, if you're employing that many people a month, this is one account of many. It's not unreasonable. Like a 50% markup is, in some cases and in some cities, quite thin, because you've got to pay, if you have an office, you've got to pay for your office, you've got to pay for all of your, insurance, you've got to pay for equipment, like all of those costs that aren't put into these hard costs. I just caveat that to say it's not unreasonable.
No, it's not. And we know that from direct experience, right? I mean,
Exactly.
you on multiple companies and me just even on the last one. It's
Exactly.
like running a team.
I've run an agency P&L before, and that's that type of markup is going to get you stay in business is what you get to do.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, you look at your monthly costs in working with this team on the agency side, it's just about $80K. Again, that's kind of all in costs that you're covering. But if you start to think about, okay, if I want to build this team on my own and I'm going to replicate, part of this team is full-time, part of this team is freelance. I'm going to be responsible for benefits for the full-time team, for the W-2 team. And I also have a little bit of leeway to offer perks to my 1099 folks, which is like an excellent thing to be thinking about. Again, this is like, how do you use that money to go directly into the hands of the people who are supporting your business? Like, have a stipend program. Like, we can help with that. There's like a lot of ways that you can, reward your flexible talent to be on par with your W-2s in a way that makes the team feel really equal. And again, your team motivated to keep coming back for project work. Going down the line, your employer taxes are reduced because your overall W-2 headcount is not the full team. So the total talent hard costs roughly shake out to be about the same, because you're giving perks for those 1099s. And our subscription fee, there's a couple different layers packages that we can run with, and we'll talk about pricing maybe in another call. But let's say that you're at the top of the line package with Teamera and you're paying $1,500 a month for access to the platform that lets you build and manage your teams and have some baseline reporting. Combined with our processing, the talent processing fee is a function of talent payments that are going through our system. And ultimately, you land on a significantly lower number month over month to pay that same team. And again, you're treating your freelancers great. You're giving them a stipend. Your full-time team are getting the same equal benefits as they would at an agency. But your costs, you're saving almost 30 grand a month. Again, can you imagine what you can do with that type of money? You could totally hire an expert operations lead to run this entire team, you could be offering significantly more benefits to your team. You could have a really robust remote work package that supports this team being in any, any location. And you can be putting more money towards promoting the work that this team's doing on the, if we're talking about marketing teams.
Yep. Yeah, this is great. And so, after you calculate the savings, you get this report. And then and then what we'll do after you kind of review this is we can send you a PDF with even more information that just talks about some of the best practices and stuff. Did you want to take a little time and just show a little bit of that? Do we have enough time?
Well, I know that we're at time. I will quickly say that, and maybe we can flip to it. There's just a couple bullet points here for anybody that's considering building an Elastic team. We've done this with multiple companies across enterprise scale companies, across startups, across mid-sized brands. I feel certainly, well educated in what it takes to build the right infrastructure to support an Elastic team and why they're truly helpful for companies. And so we're just giving a couple quick tips here within this PDF. Again, you get this with your custom results. Why you may want to consider building an Elastic team in the first place. This could be a point of discussion within your company as you're planning for next year, And then the second page is functional tips to start thinking about how to bring on and set up your Elastic teams for success. And these are with or without Teamera. This is, how do you build, how do you make it easy for yourself to operate with a freelance first hiring mindset? And what pieces of the kind of onboarding puzzle can you do once, in a set it and forget it way? Can you build a briefing framework for yourself? Can you build a brand, wiki or a brand hub for yourself that any flexible talents coming into your team can access? And it's a project to do once, but then it's set, and it's little things like that can truly set a company up for much more flexibility in the long run.
Yep. This is a future topic we should be talking about. And then the third page is what we were talking about earlier. And then we go into some more tips, right? And then ultimately that's it. Yeah, that's great. So anything else you wanted to kind of share, about what's the week, the rest of the week and going into next week looking like? Or again, I guess we could remind people, if you're interested, definitely either book a demo or go to teamera.co. If you want to talk to Rae herself, you can book a demo. Or you could just go to teamera.co, and right there on the homepage, you can get access to the calculator and reuse it over and over again.
Run a bunch of scenarios.
Doing different scenarios. Yeah,
definitely. I think that the things that are ahead. So we're planning our product launch that's going to happen in a couple of weeks. So we're running fast and furious at that right now. As you just mentioned, folks can book a demo right now. We've got demos of both of our build and manage tools, and we've got our interactive calculator to help help people understand, is this a good path for them long term? But as we get closer to launch, we're just going to, it's about getting some customers in the door. And so we're working on our updated version of our website, which will be a fully transactional site that's able to accept subscriptions. So that's functional, along with updating kind of content and adding some landing pages that I think will be educational for our customer audiences. And then secondarily, we're working on actually 2 other additional interactive tools that are meant to support the other 2 audience segments that I mentioned in our last session on Tuesday, which are agency side leaders. We know that our Elastic Team Toolkit has a ton of value to agency side users in a different way. And so we want to help show them how much time we can be saving them from an operational perspective, managing their freelance workforce. And for enterprise leaders who are using freelancers across multiple departments, again, it's about time savings. How can we help you with your efficiency if you're using freelancers with the same skill sets across different departments in your company? And if those departments aren't speaking, how can we help everybody interact in a really cohesive way? And again, it's all for the best access for freelancers themselves, right? So I think that our goal is to be rolling those tools out as part of our launch. I know the team is working on developing them right now. And so that's what we're going to be up to for the next, I would say, the week ahead.
Exciting. Okay. Well, have a great weekend, and we'll talk again soon.